Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Surah Kafirun. Central theme, relationship with preceding surah, and sequence in the subject matter. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has declared acquittal from the die-hard leaders of the disbelievers of the Quraysh in this surah. In all the previous surahs, leaders of the Quraysh are addressed. However, the address is in their capacity of human beings and as the nation of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Nowhere are they addressed in the tone "Qul ya ayyuhal kafirun" or "Say, O disbelievers." However, in this surah, they are openly addressed as disbelievers and a declaration of acquittal and severing of ties is made. This declaration is in accordance with the law of the Almighty regarding His messengers, as is explained in the previous surahs. And that is, messengers first call their people towards the primary aspects of religion, which are belief in monotheism and in the hereafter. In this preaching, they address their people by saying, "O my people," and keep addressing them in these words as long as the pundits and leaders among their people do not make them lose hope. When all hope is lost from them and it becomes evident that they will not let go of their stubbornness, the Almighty directs His messenger to migrate for them, who then pronounces His acquittal and renunciation from them and migrates with His followers. The migration of a messenger is like a very final warning for his people. If after this event also they do not mend their ways, the Almighty, after giving them limited respite, destroys all the blatant rejectors. This destruction may take place in the life of a messenger, or it may take place after him. It may also happen through some natural calamity or through the swords of the followers of the messenger. This is a common feature in the preaching mission of all the messengers from Noah to Abraham and then right up to Muhammad ﷺ, and is evident from the history of all these messengers recorded in the Qur'an. We have been alluding it to its various aspects. The address of Ya ayyuhal kafirun is obviously directed at the die-hard leaders of the Quraysh who were at the forefront in opposing the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Their continuous opposition and animosity had made it clear that this opposition was not based on any doubt or confusion, but was in fact because of the conceit in their ancestral leadership that had made them so blind that except for God's punishment, nothing could have shook them. It is because of this mentality of the addressees that whatever is said in this surah is said in a very blatant manner, and everything said is based on reality. People who think that the address by the words Ya ayyuhal kafirun is meant to censure them or to express anger at them are mistaken. In reality, the disbelief or kufr of a group never becomes evident unless the people on the right path communicate the truth to them to such an extent that they are left with no excuse to deny it. It is only after this that their disbelief becomes obvious, and it is only after this is it allowed that those on the right path should declare their acquittal from them, and if a need arises, even to declare holy war or jihad on them. The messengers of God have undertaken migration and launched offensives only after the truth has been communicated to their addressees to such an extent, and it is this what justice entails. This surah also ended all possibilities of any sort of compromise regarding religion with the leaders of the Quraysh. Hence, this surah is not merely a surah of migration, it is practically a declaration of war with them. It is evident from our explanation of the following verse of Surah Yunus that the leaders of the Quraysh had suggested to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ that if he wanted them to embrace faith, then the only possible option was to either bring another Qur'an or to make some changes in it which were acceptable to them. The words are "I'ti bi Qur'anin ghayri haza aw baddilhu," or bring some other Qur'an or change it. Surah number 10, verse 15. We have written there that it is evident from various insinuations of the Qur'an that the greatest objection which the leaders of the Quraysh had was on the Quranic teaching of monotheism, and they stressed that a change be made in it. They regarded to be against their ancestral beliefs and feared that if they rejected all gods except God, as required by the Qur'an, then this would ruin their political position. The answer to this demand of theirs was given from the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in the words, "Qul ma yakunu li an ubaddilahu min tilqa'i nafsi," or tell them, what right have I to change it of my own? Surah number 10, verse 15. This answer was despairing for the Quraysh, yet it was decisive. However, in this surah, they have been answered in such a decisive and ultimate manner that the matter stood closed. In other words, this meant that no possibility of any compromise remained, and if the Quraysh persisted with their stubbornness, they would have to face the swords of the believers. The fact that this surah is placed right after Surah Kawthar also has great meaningfulness. It is evident from the explanation of Surah Kawthar that the surah is actually a harbinger to the conquest of Mecca, which in other words means that before the surah which directs the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ to migrate and launch jihad, another surah had already given him the glad tidings of triumph and divine help. This was to assure him and his companions that though they would have to go through the hardships of migration and war, they would be victorious in the end. The Almighty has already decided that He will bless His Prophet with success and victory, and he and his companions would be granted both the Qasr of this world and of the next. Such glad tidings have also been given to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in the supplication of migration mentioned in Surah Bani Israel in the following words: وَقُلْ رَبِّ أَدْخِلْنِي مُدْخَلَ صِدْقٍ وَأَخْرِجْنِي مُخْرَجَ صِدْقٍ. Pray, Lord, grant me an honorable entrance and an honorable exit. Surah number 17, verse 80. A little deliberation on the contents of this supplication shows that the Almighty has given the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ glad tidings in an invocatory style. Although his time of leaving Mecca is drawing near, yet even before this departure, the Almighty has arranged for him a grand entry to the place of migration. In short, in this surah, the message is given from the tongue of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ to the leaders of the Quraysh. There is no common ground between him and them regarding the basic issue of religion, which is the God who is to be worshipped. The common ground neither exists at that time, nor did it exist in the past, and nor is there any possibility of it in the future. Hence, there no longer is a chance of any compromise between him and them. They should follow their religion, and the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and his followers should follow theirs until the judgment of God arrives. Text of the surah.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Qul ya ayyuhal kafirun la a'budu ma ta'budun wa la antum 'abidun ma a'budu ولا أنا عابد ما عبدتم ولا أنتم عابدون ما أعبد لكم دينكم ولي دين.
Translation of the surah. In the name of God, the most gracious, the ever merciful. Say, O believers, I shall not worship that which you worship, nor will you ever worship that which I worship, nor did I worship that which you worshipped, nor did you ever worship that which I have been worshipping. To you your religion, and to me mine. Explanation of the surah. قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ. Say, O believers. The imperative verb قُلْ here means to declare. It is used in this meaning in the Qur'an. The subject matter of this surah required a declaration so that people who were obsessed with the desire of striking a compromise between Islam and disbelief should lose hope in this strategy, which was destined to fail. Such a declaration was also required so that the simpletons regarded people who put forward such suggestions to be peace lovers and reconciliation activists know the real truth. They should know that this was not the path of peace, it was the path of ever-increasing disorder. The words Ya ayyuhal kafirun are directed at the leaders of the Quraysh who had denied the truth and who were the foremost adversaries of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. After years of preaching efforts from the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, the change that did come in them was that they demanded an amalgam of Islam and disbelief. It should be kept in mind that a messenger is a means of communicating the truth in such an ultimate form to his adversaries that they are left with no legitimate excuse to deny it. If his efforts are unable to influence them, then it only means that nothing can change and reform them. Consequently, the hopelessness expressed about these people further down in the surah came absolutely true. None of them embraced Islam, and became a prey to his own ego and pride. Two questions here arise about the nature of this address. One of them is that generally the Qur'an has not addressed the Quraysh in such a harsh tone. What then is the characteristic of this surah that they have been addressed by the words, Ya ayyuhal kafirun? The second question which arises is that the Quraysh, and in fact the Arabs in general, did not deny God. They associated partners with Him. Why then did the Qur'an address them as disbelievers, and why did it not address them as idolaters? Although we have answered this question at various places in this exegesis and also indicated it in the introduction of this surah, we allude to the answer here once again. The answer to the first question is that this address was adopted by the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ only after he had lost hope in them and migrated from them after communicating the truth to them in such an ultimate manner that they were left with no excuse to deny it. The Almighty directs His Messenger to migrate only when it becomes evident from the behavior of His people that they are not left with any ability to accept faith, and their arrogance has reached such an extent that if they are further pressed, they might, God forbid, kill the Messenger. At this instance, it seems absolutely appropriate that the Messenger, after declaring his despair and hopelessness from his people and their deities, separate from them. Since the preaching of a messenger has served the purpose of explaining at length both Islam and disbelief, therefore it becomes crystal clear that anyone who adopts either of them does not do so in ignorance. Consequently, at this stage, if he addresses people who have chosen to adhere to disbelief as, O disbelievers, then this address is very apt and pertinent. A teaching which becomes evident from us from this explanation is that although it is the responsibility of every Muslim to call anything which is polytheistic or comes under the ambit of disbelief as polytheistic and disbelief, however, declaring some group as kafir and renouncing it or severing ties from it or declaring jihad against it is a matter which requires great caution. In particular, the case of those people who regard their erroneous views to be nothing but Islam is very complex. This is further complicated when no system exists to preach them what true Islam is. In such circumstances, the right path is that a person should criticize their erroneous and deviant views and also distance himself from participating in their activities which are afflicted with polytheistic practices and religious innovations. However, he should not declare them to be kafir and announce his acquittal from them unless he is compelled to do so or unless sound reasons come before him which show that he has communicated the truth to them. This last thing is very difficult. The answer to the second question is that polytheism or shirk is in fact disbelief or kufr. Only that faith is acceptable in religion which comes with complete monotheistic attitudes. This means that a person should not associate anyone with God's being, attributes, and rights in any way. The Almighty is in no need of the faith and worship of anyone, so that He has to accept every type of faith and every type of worship, even though it is contaminated with polytheism. He requires His servants to worship Him on His own prescribed conditions, not on those of others. Hence, every deed which is not done purely and solely for Him is not acceptable to Him. As per the philosophy of the Qur'an, there is no difference between a person who denies God and a person who believes in God but also believes in others besides him, either as his equals or as his subordinates. Both these persons are in fact rejectors of God and, in other words, are kafir. The reason for this is that professing belief in God whilst indulging in polytheism is a negation of all His higher attributes, and professing faith in such a manner is equivalent to not professing faith in Him. The Qur'an, whilst addressing these polytheists as disbelievers, has revealed that polytheism is in fact disbelief. No one should be mistaken that it is something lesser than disbelief or that it can be in any way shown consideration.